Hello, bird nerds. It's the Bird Emergency. I'm Grant Williams. I am a bird nerd. It's Photography Friday, and in Photography Friday, I am an absolute rank beginner. I will be dispensing no advice. But that's good because today we're going to be talking a lot about feelings. And we've got a special guest who can tell us a lot about how photography has been a sort of bolstering factor in their life. But first, regular co-host joins me, Nicolas Rakotopare.
Good morning.
Nick. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Really great. And there we go. We've brought in the surprise guest as well, Sandy Horne. Now, Nick, first with you. You're in the Gold Coast at the morning. You've been telling us that the weather is smashing you, so maybe that will give us some dramas. But tell us what's going on in the Gold Coast at the moment.
Well, there's a bit of a low pressure system off the east coast. So anywhere between northern New South Wales and around Townsville, they say it's pretty windy. We're copping some massive rain showers. But yeah, the wind is pretty off the charts. It's giving me some memories of sleeping through cyclones and things in Madagascar. But yeah, I got woken up a few times, all the windows rattling pretty loudly last night. They are very old windows, but yeah, it's a wild weather. So I hope that there's a pair of Bubuk that I visit a lot. And after the last sort of wild weather, they've changed their day roost area because it's completely broken down from like branches falling down. So I'm curious to see. I hope they're fine, but I'm curious to see what they do this time.
You'll have to get out and track them down. Now, if you're a first-time viewer for Photography Friday, it's our occasional look at bird and wildlife photography in general. We do talk a bit of gear, so for gearheads, you're going to get a bit of that. But we focus more on why people like the photography they do and how it makes all of us feel. Warm and fuzzy stuff. Nick is a professional photographer as well as a wildlife scientist. I'll leave that out there in general terms. We won't peg that back too much. You can go back to the last episode and learn Nick's story. But the reason we're here today is to talk to Sandy Horne, who is up there in the corner, sitting in Adelaide. And Sandy, I invited you on. Welcome, by the way. But I invited you on because you've been posting photos into social media. Your Flickr album is great to poke around. I've been lucky enough to have the opportunity to do that. But you've built up quite a fan base on Twitter, and you are really generous in what you post, and you're really generous in what you share about your photography journey in general. So welcome, thanks, and tell us what is going on in Adelaide. Is it anywhere near what's going on in the Gold Coast?
Hi, Grant. Hi, Nico. It's grey and cold, and I'm going stir crazy because I haven't been properly birding for, it seems like, forever. But I hope to remedy that tomorrow. Tomorrow's forecast to be quite nice, so I'm going up to see my peregrine falcons if the weather cooperates. But hasn't been a lot of photography from me lately, and I need to get out for my own mental health, really.
Well, we'll talk about mental health in a short while. And hey, we're not doctors, all right? But Sandy, first, I wanted you to tell us about this photo. Why would I have picked it? Why is it important?
This photo has been shortlisted in the current Australian Geographic Nature Photographer of the Year competition, and I was absolutely thrilled to have it picked, but I nearly didn't submit it. I took it just before submissions closed early this year, and I only submitted it because it was very popular on Twitter. I put it up on Twitter and people just loved it. So at the very last minute, I threw it in the urban animals category, thinking it won't get anywhere, but let's give it a go. And they rejected all of my other photos, which were carefully chosen, but picked up on this one. And I think people love it because people relate to it. I find on social media the birds that people respond to are those that they're very familiar with. Galahs, any sort of cockatoo, kookaburras, magpies are always really, really popular. So I was pleased they chose this one, even though I'm surprised, but I'm pleased.
Well, of course, Sandy, I've picked it and was really hoping to talk about it a little bit because I do the Monday with Holly fortnightly, and the focus of that is urban birds, the birds that we live with every day. So tell us about this magpie. Where is he?
Oh, well,
actually, it's a she, I think, isn't it?
It's the female. Where I used to live in Auburn in the Clare Valley, we had a pair of magpies that used to hang around. They were the resident pair of magpies. So we got to know them and their personalities quite well. And of course, this was a hot day in January, and this was quite common. We'd put the sprinkler on for the birds to enjoy. And I was sitting out there, taking a few snaps. But I think this one really captured the sheer joy of the bird enjoying the water. It's a really common image to me. It's a really familiar image to me. But, yeah, I think many Australians can relate to it, yeah.
Did you take a lot of pictures of this bird in this sequence before you picked this one out?
Yes, I had it set on high-speed continuous, probably at a speed of 25/100th of a second, I think, from memory. Spray and pray is what they say. You take a lot of shots, and one or two is bound to be okay. But this was the one that spoke to me. She's got her eyes closed and she's really into it.
Yeah, birds and sprinklers, untold joy just watching birds and sprinklers. Now, Sandy, I'm assuming you took that photo with that camera?
Yes, that's my main birding body. I bought that back in October last year for my 60th birthday. And, of course, I'm actually still learning how to use it. I keep finding new settings on there. But the really impressive thing about it is its eye-tracking technology. I don't always use it, but when I do, it blows my mind how it maintains focus on birds' eyes in flight. It's incredible.
Nico, just as a recap, you're a Canon fellow as well. What's your body?
Absolutely.
Your main body?
I have a Canon 3 as of 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
That's my first camera with that specific eye tracking as well. Yeah. And so until then, I had regular DSLR. And the first time I tried, it wasn't that one. I've been testing mirrorless, like the R5, the R6, and the other R cameras and some other mirrorless brands as well. But that eye tracking that Sandy is mentioning, when I first tried it about 2 years ago, a year and a half on the R5, my first reaction was like, this should be illegal. It's just too easy. It's just people that start with a camera that does eye tracking will never understand the difficulties of focusing on the bird in flight when you have 3 autofocus points. No, it's absolutely awesome. Yeah, it's great technology.
In fact, I got some advice from Nico before I bought that camera. I was tossing up between the R5 and the R6, and I decided the R5 is quite a bit more expensive, and I couldn't justify the extra expense. I would have if I'd been doing a lot of video, but I don't do a lot of video, so I've been quite happy with the R6.
We might talk about choosing a camera a little, probably right towards the end, because I'm going through the whole FOMO and FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and the fear of missing out and budgeting. All those decisions are happening with me at the moment. And, is that Louis? Can you guys hear that? No,
I can hear.
Yeah.
That's got to be a Gold Coast bird. What was that?
No, wasn't here.
I've got a magpie at the front of my house right now.
Yeah.
That's a young magpie then.
I've got about 20 of them that hang around here. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, yeah, because that doesn't sound like my magpies. And for those of you who are overseas, when we talk about the magpie in Australia, we're talking about this, but Sandy's got the black-backed magpie, the version of the Australian magpie, which is quite different looking to the magpie I have, which is the white-backed version. And my magpies are very bold and they sing more than squawk, whereas I would have said that one we just heard, Sandy, was a squawker. So that they are quite different in the geographic areas. They have different songs, slightly different behaviours. So there we go. That's
Louis. This is what started. Yeah, this little guy started me on my interest in birds. So back in 1984, he flew into where I was working at a printing company. And he was clearly exhausted, and somebody stuck a basket over him, and we all looked at this really pretty bird thinking, what is he? Nobody knew anything about birds. As it turned out, I took him home to look after him because he wasn't in a good shape. We had no idea what he was. So we called him Louis the lorikeet, thinking he was a lorikeet. That's how ignorant I was. As it turns out, he's a Port Lincoln parrot, and he was clearly an escapee. He's not native to this part of Adelaide. Louis was actually a pet for us for more than 30 years. I had no idea it was going to be such a huge commitment. And he moved interstate with us. He lived in first Adelaide, then Melbourne, Sydney, back to Adelaide. So planes, trains and automobiles. And he could whistle the 1812 overture. So he was full of character, amazing bird. So I've got a real soft spot for all the Australian ringneck parrots because of that. But he died a few years ago, unfortunately, but always happy memories of Louis. And so that got me started learning about parrots in particular, and then later more birds. So that's where the bird journey started for me.
And it's been a journey that you have been really willing to share with everybody through social media. But before
I loved it. I love doing that. I love taking people, not everyone can get out like I do into these remote areas to get these shots. And if I can share that with people, it's a real privilege. And if I can teach people along the way, it's a nice thing to do.
Nico, I mentioned when we were doing the intros that Sandy was really generous with what she shares. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that comment and my view that a lot of people who could be furthering at a time where we really need more people to understand and care about what's just beyond our local neighbourhoods, the wildlife that is out there. A lot of people are only putting material out if there's a profit, if there's a benefit in it for them. And Sandy doesn't do that. So I was wondering if you think it is the main way of thinking for professional photographers who are going on expeditions, going to places that most of us will never journey to as part of their work, that they don't share a shitload, for want of a better term, of their material.
I don't think, again, at least in my experience, and we saw like my friends in that sort of industry and area, it never stems from a place of not being willing to share a lot because of like money options. It's because we're talking to specifics here, people that do like expeditions and things, and often you do that for an assignment, a magazine, a client, something. So there are things along that way that reduces sort of like what you will be sharing early on or afterwards. I don't see that with a lot of my colleagues, contacts, acquaintances, and friends, that people would be reluctant to share. I think the reason I see more often is the time it takes to consistently share on social media, to share a lot of it. So some people also are very particular about what they share as well. And same, I don't post a huge amount, I would say, on the scheme of things, but it's just personal preference. I'm very picky about what I think I like, or like very picky with myself. And I think some people are like that as well. No, I don't think it's really, it comes down to like a sort of like a monetary thing that people don't want to share because they prefer keeping things for that will make money or anything. I think there's bigger factors that decides how people are sharing.
Yeah, one thing I had really thought was going to be a limiting factor for people sharing is time, because social media takes a lot of time.
It does. Making caption, choosing the image, resizing for the right things. It's constantly changing. One day you have a 6:9, the next they change to a 4:5. You have to recrop the photos if you want to put them back in that format. And one thing that every social media platform loves, and every algorithm is a consistency and posting a lot, and that takes a lot of time, a lot of time.
So thanks, Stan. You saw Stan on Kangaroo Island, just giving us a nice comment. I'm glad you're finding it worthwhile, Stan. That's good. Sandy, we might just have a quick look at your other main lenses before we go into some of the things you just mentioned. So that's your sort of standard main lens, yeah?
Well, that's my wide angle, so I use that for landscapes. So often when I go out birding, I'll have my main long lens around my neck, but I might have my spare camera off my shoulder, either with the landscape, the wide angle lens, or the macro lens, because you never know when you're going to bump into an interesting insect or an orchid or a spider. So I always like to have that option that if the birds aren't happening, there's always something else to take a photo of. That's my old camera, my 7D.
Okay, so that's what I've marked as your backup camera. But
that's actually, yeah.
But that's your spare camera there. That's your macro and landscape, which is that's the OS.
That's an R, no, I believe. Sandy has an RP.
Yes, not quite that one. Similar.
Okay. Well, that's Wikipedia and Google letting me down again when I search for one that I'm allowed to use.
Yes.
So you've got. Let's pretend this is the right one.
Yes.
That would be your macro one, which you are using with the wide angle lens.
Yes.
Yes.
Or the macro lens.
Which is not that one. Oh, it is that one. Okay,
yes.
I've got that one. Okay.
So I'll quite often have that in my backpack just in case. And it's also good to have a backup just in case your main camera fails for whatever reason.
Now, that's a 100mm lens?
Yep.
So tell us what the main features are of that lens and why you not the tech specs, but why is that a good one for how you use it? And is there any of the pictures that you recommended to me that you took with that lens?
I don't think I did share any of my macro shots, but
okay, I'll add some to the webpage. Once we publish the episode. If you do have a macro folder in your Flickr. So.
I just have that on standby in case anything interesting comes along.
Flowers,
for instance. Yeah, fungi recently. I was up Altona Land Care in the Barossa Valley a couple of weekends ago, and I saw these little teeny tiny fungi, Lacari. So there I was, flat out on my belly in the mud with my macro lens trying to get some shots of these. And, of course, you've got to take lots of shots with different focal lengths so that you can stack them to get a really good end result. So it's a really tedious process. It takes a lot of time and energy, but, sometimes it turns out really well. And I do that with orchids too. It's coming up to orchid season now. So tomorrow I hope to get up to Spring Gully Conservation Park, where I hope to find a few nice orchids to photograph, as well as birds.
Now, I'll just note that we have got this comment. We're going to be talking about Panasonic Lumix stuff in a different show. We've got the Canon crew on at the moment. I'm going through that whole process at the moment. I want to purchase Micro Four Thirds. So I'm doing the Panasonic Olympus, blah, 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 blah. So yes, we'll be talking about that in a future episode. I might just bring up why I am looking at Micro Four Thirds rather than going for a rig like yours, Sandy. One of the main reasons is I've got a project which I'm working on for next year, which will be the low impact, low carbon birding project where I travel as far as I possibly can with an e-bike. Now, obviously, I love your big lens, Sandy, but I don't want to carry anything that big and that heavy. So Micro Four Thirds gives me the option to achieve similar results, yes, with something like that without having to carry one. Well, while you had that up, Sandy, let's talk about that lens. How often are you shooting with that?
What do you mean? How many days a week or?
No. If you're out and you take, let's say you take 2,000 frames, right?
Yes.
And we'll have a look at some shots in a minute. Would most of them be with that lens and that camera body? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I give it a...
What is that lens on the photo? Sorry to inject. The photo, that's not your lens.
No. That's one I got from Wikipedia, and that was from a public observatory in Hong Kong with that lens, and it's where people in an office building come and look probably into the next office building by the look of it.
I was wondering. Yeah, I just wanted to. Yeah. I was confused. Yep.
Yeah. No, I mean, I try very hard because we're doing photography stuff. If I'm using images,
it has to be the right. Yeah. I was just
do the right thing. So
wondering.
All the credits, by the way, all the credits for all the photos on the webpage are going to be down there if you want to check out and see all the people's Flickrs and all that kind of stuff. So
I get a lot of comments from people when I've got this around my neck. People like to come up and talk to me, and different types of people ask different types of questions. Oh, there I am. But
there you are again.
My son visited recently. He lives in America, and I took him birding.
I didn't get the story for that one.
Look, we were up at Yakka, which is a tiny little town north of here, and we saw a mallee ringneck in the tree, and I positioned the car so I could get a shot from the car, and I leaned across my poor long-suffering son and took those shots, and I didn't have any idea he was actually taking photos of what was going on, and it was just hilarious. So I smushed him in the face with my camera, but he didn't seem to mind too much. Fortunately, he likes birds too. But I get lots of people talking to me. But the best one was I was at Port Germain Jetty not so long ago, and this teenage boy ran up to me and he was, wow, that's a big lens. And then typical kid, how much was it? You know, no adult would ask you that, but the kids are just so honest. How much did it cost? He was just interested in the price of it.
It's a lot, isn't it?
It's a lot. I told him it's actually worth more than my car.
So that's another thing which I think is really great with your approach, Sandy, is that you've obviously invested a lot in photography, which indicates it's very, very important to you. It's not your job, right?
No, I'm not a professional. I'm not an expert. There are huge gaps in my understanding of technical stuff. I have a Monday to Thursday real job. This is my hobby and my passion and my therapy. And, of course, it does cost a lot of money, but I've gradually built up to this stage. And, of course, people have all sorts of hobbies. People have boats that cost a lot of money. You know, joining sporting clubs, that costs a lot of money. And it brings me so much satisfaction that I really don't mind buying this gear because I know I get my money's worth out of it.
Well, now we've come to the fun bit. If you want more gear talk, we will come back. I've got some specific questions about gear. But, Sandy, this is a picture of something which you just referenced a little bit before.
Ah, yes, my Peregrine falcons. I had a very lucky meeting when I was at Spring Gully Conservation Park. I started chatting to some people. I was there actually. There are Peregrine falcons at Spring Gully. So I was there trying to get shots, but I didn't have any luck. And I was chatting to a couple there and they said, well, why don't you come to our farm? We've got Peregrine falcons. So I was there the next weekend, no doubt. They have a disused quarry on their farm and they have this pair of Peregrine falcons. And so I'm free to visit whenever I wish, but of course you have to be pretty careful with these birds. They really don't appreciate any interference. Of course, it's a working property and the owners of the property go up to the quarry all the time, so they're actually used to seeing people around. My visits there are typically really short. If I think I'm upsetting the birds, I just leave. They're very intimidating. If they don't like you there, they will let you know and chase you off the property. And it depends what time of year you go there, how willing they are to have you around. I'm heading up there tomorrow. I'm going to set up my camera trap up on the top of the quarry because we're coming up to breeding season now and I'm hoping to get a few shots remotely. That's my camera trap.
We'll come back to that, but I just wanted to let people know that we have that.
Yeah, but it's been interesting. They had a clutch of 2 babies which fledged. That's one of the babies just after it fledged. And, of course, that's the time when you have to be especially careful. And that's specifically why I bought my 2x extender, which I have here. That's it. That allows me to get close to the birds without getting physically close to the birds. This is really heavy and it's not real cheap, and of course it's not ideal. I don't use it a lot, but because it messes up your settings in a big way. So it changes everything and you've got to adjust for it. So
how far away were you from the birds approximately when you took that shot?
I don't know about distance. I can't measure distances. I don't know, but quite a distance. But with my 2x extender, I was able to get in a bit closer with my shots without upsetting the birds. So that was the whole plan. I mean, I could get much closer to these birds if I wished, but they would not like that. They would not tolerate that. And I don't want to risk scaring them away because this quarry is like the perfect environment for peregrines. I really don't want to interfere with what's going on. This time of year, it should be okay. They should tolerate me. They don't have any young. They don't have any eggs. So I should be able to go up to the top of the quarry without too many problems. But I'll get up there, set up the camera trap and get out really quickly. I might get some shots if they're around. They might be off hunting. I don't know. They're usually there.
Nico, remember all the things we didn't get to talk about in the last episode?
Mm-hmm.
That really is part of that set of issues, isn't it? How close should you get to birds going about their own daily business, doing their own thing in order to not affect their behaviour? Nico, do you use extenders in your work very often?
Yeah, I've until very recently my main sort of wildlife photography setup was a 300 2.8 with a ×2 extender, and then I had that on my 7D Mark II for a long time, and then on my 1DX, so I'd lost a bit of reach with going to the full frame. But that's on the 7D Mark II. That would have been around just shy of 1,000 millimeter all the time, which is quite a big focal length. And so I do use my extender a lot. I have lots of discussion about extenders, not necessarily on the ethics side of things, but a lot of people are scared of using them because of quality, like loss of quality, loss of light and things. So it's always very, very interesting. But to me, like because every context is different, like when I walk around here, there's a little marina just around the corner where I often walk in the evening, and there is a family of superb ferrets there. And they just sit on the railing as I walk by. The birds are literally 2 meters away from me, and there is absolutely no. They're so used to have people walk around. So I think often, it's a very context based in terms of how close and what you can and things like that. Birds that come into your backyards are often more used to that. But if you're out in a national park, things will be way more wary, and that's where you try and avoid being too close and disturbing. As Sandy said, if you see sign of distress, you just shouldn't continue, and always use the longest possible focal length that you can have to try and, even for the the welfare of the animals. It's not just the birds, but the welfare of the animals you're photographing is foremost all the time. Yes. in everything, whether it's for your hobby work as a professional, that's something that we just stand by. It's just what it is. But there is again a little bit of a context to that. Absolutely, like I said, a bird in your backyard that you see every day versus something that's less used to people. Things in parks in Australia would come. So I think the distance really isn't the determining factor here, because it's so contact in space. It's really respecting the boundaries that the animal sets for you.
Yep. Sandy, you mentioned that this pair of peregrines will let you know if they're not happy, that I'm assuming they do the dive bombing and hunt you off. Did you, when you took this shot, did you have the extender on your big lens?
No, this was one of my very first visits there, actually. No, this was with my 500. Yeah. Okay. And in fact, the owners of the property don't actually know a lot about peregrine falcons. They knew they were there. They've been really pleased to see my photos, to see them up close and to learn about their behaviour. So it's been a two-way relationship with the owners of the property. I've been able to teach them about their birds, and they've been absolutely fascinated. And of course, I get the benefit of having access to their property. So it's been good.
Which is one of the reasons that I'm so interested in sharing about photography, even though I'm an absolute rank beginner, is that it has a really important communicative value to help bring other people, outsiders, for want of a better term, the uneducated, the uninitiated, into the world of birds. Now, this is one of the offspring that you mentioned from last season, is that right, Sandy?
Yes.
Have you got any idea if it's still within the parents' territory, or is it?
No. I think, well, as we know, I think they chase the young away once they're independent. So the last time I went there, which was quite some time ago, there was only the 2 adults there. So they would have either gone off and found their own territory, or there's a lot of them don't survive. So there's a high, mortality rate with young peregrines.
So hopefully he's happy and off somewhere else.
Yeah, I hope so.
He or she, I don't think we were able to fix that one.
No.
Staked out its own claim and found a mate and is getting busy now.
Yes,
Getting jiggy.
Yes. Well, that's what my camera trap may get. I know where their peregrines like to hang out. I know what their favourite little perching spots are in the quarry. So my aim is to get up there and set up the camera so I get one of those spots, and we may get some X-rated photos.
Just take this opportunity to say hello and welcome to everyone that's watching live. You can comment, you can ask a question, you can say anything you like, and as long as it's not too outlandish, I'll put it up and we'll talk about it. Sandy, this is a shot of yours I really like, just basically because I really like Crimson Chats.
Yeah.
Tell us the bit of the story on this shot.
They're awesome birds, aren't they? And they're birds we don't see in this spot. This was a few years ago. It was drought times, and we had a lot of birds coming down much further south than they normally would. And I'm sure it's due to the drought. They were looking for food and water and places to breed. I got a tip off from a bird friend that there were these crimson chats on a particular dirt road up near Balaclava. So I went out to find them, and I visited them a few times. And on one of my visits, I noticed that they were collecting food and flying into a little low shrub on the side of this dirt road. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Maybe they've got babies. So when they went off looking for food, I quickly walked up to the bush and parted the leaves, and I looked in and there was a nest with 2 little black wriggly babies in there. And, oh, wow, it's amazing. So I didn't stay long. I backed away and left the birds in peace. But it was such a vulnerable position, this little shrub right on the very side of the road. It would have been so easy for a car or a farmer's tractor to run over that spot. I'd also seen a cat and a fox in that area. So incredibly vulnerable. Yeah, so it was nice to watch the birds coming in and feeding their young, but I chose not to take a photo of the babies very deliberately. I just didn't want to I didn't want to upset the parents for a start, and I didn't want to disturb the babies. I didn't want to bring any attention to the babies from any cats or foxes that might have been around. Yeah, I just felt it was better just for me to enjoy that really brief experience and just leave them in peace. So sometimes you've got to put the welfare of the birds ahead of your desire to get that photo.
Can you remember what you were using? Was this on with the long lens, or was this with the standard?
That would have been with my 400 prime lens and my 7D Mark II. So
fantastic.
And these are, it doesn't show it there, but these are super tiny birds. They're really, really tiny, but the colouring is brilliant. We often, in this area, we often get white-fronted chats and orange chats. Red chats scarlet chats are really uncommon.
Yeah. Nico, you would have seen the crimson chat in your forays into the drier parts of Australia, I assume?
Yeah, I've seen crimson chats before, but I've never gotten a photo of them. But I've seen these absolutely stunning birds.
Mm.
I love their behaviours, that they're quite similar with the white-fronted chat in the way they go about their business. And if you are lucky enough to find a small group and watch them for a while, they're really intriguing. They're a bit like I reckon, when you're watching a group and the dynamics. So that's why I chose this one. Sandy, I really want you to tell us about this next one. I know that you are into budgie butts.
That's actually the desktop on my computer at the moment. Yeah, this was another case about the same time as the Crimson Chat. We had budgies coming down quite close to Adelaide. So this was up near Roseworthy, which isn't too far away. And I had a few visits there. The budgies were hanging around. And on this one particular day, I was just madly shooting, trying to get shots. And when I was reviewing my shots, I nearly deleted this one thinking, oh, that's terrible. But then I took another look and I said, it has got some redeeming qualities. And it's actually one of my all-time favourites. I call it budgie butts because the budgies come into this sheep trough to have a quick drink. And you've got to be so quick. They just move so quickly. They come and have a drink and they're gone. But I quite like this one.
Yeah. The next one is one that you got a lot of comments and positive feedback for. And I'm going to treat this as the first one of a pair, Sandy. Nick, you may have seen this before. Sandy, tell us about this shot.
That's my gallery in full bloom. I was coming back from a day of birding up at Mount Bryan East. It was very late in the day and I thought I was done for the day. I was heading home. And then a huge flock of galahs flew across the car in front of me and landed in this dead tree. So I thought, oh, what are my chances? I thought, this is not going to be good. The sun was setting. I was losing the light, but I thought, I'll give it a go. There were actually power lines in the way, but I managed to crop those out. But as it turned out, it was one of my better shots. People just really love this. And it does look like blossoms on a tree, doesn't it? It's got an artistic quality.
Yeah. When you were framing the shot, did you have that in mind or were you just taking a bunch of pictures of birds?
I could see the potential, but I thought the light was against me. I didn't think I could get it to work. So consequently, it's a really high ISO. It's a fairly grainy shot technically, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to matter. I was able to do a bit of work to bring it up to an okay standard. But yes, I could see the potential when I was standing there taking the shot, and it did turn out quite well. And as you say, people have just loved it.
I want to break there for a minute to talk about not so much the pushing the ISO, because it's really difficult to talk the technical stuff in this kind of format. But you said before about the budgie pic that you were going through reviewing your pics and you nearly deleted it. Now, I would normally I'd back up everything, all the raw stuff, and then I would have a working lot of pictures that I wanted to edit, play around with later on. I wouldn't delete. I try not to delete anything when it comes to images, just in case one day you might want to do something. Now, Sandy, you mentioned you're a beginner. The post-processing part of photography is a whole other field that you need to learn and get competent with.
Yes. It's half of the magic, honestly. And I have a bit of an advantage because for a large part of my life I was working in the print and publishing industry. So I have, as a typesetter and graphic artist, so I have been familiar with Photoshop for a long time. So that hasn't been such an issue for me. I'm also, because of my graphic arts background, I know about design, I know it looks good. The rule of thirds and all of that, it comes naturally to me, I guess. That is certainly half of the magic. And I spend a lot of time on the post-processing. Like you, I'm a bit of a hoarder. When I'm out in the field, I don't have a lot of time for picking and choosing photos, so I will typically back up everything and back it up onto my laptop and onto a portable hard drive minimum. But, yeah, so you keep everything just in case. And what doesn't work can go on the crap bird photography Facebook group.
That's right. How about you, Nico? Are you ruthless in the first cull, or do you back up everything and then do a selective sort of thin out for what you think you might work on?
Both. I'm ruthless. because you just, I think you have to be, or it becomes unmanageable. But I do the same. So my workflow is usually, let's say I go on a shoot somewhere, and that applies to both my passion shoots and my professional shoots. But at the end of the day, I'm done with the day. I back up everything on double backup, everything, regardless of, there's no culling happening. Just everything's backed up. And then I finish the trip. I have these two drives, and then so I'll start working on the working drive. And as I'm doing that, I update the backup with the change that in the main one. And so basically, it will mirror the change I'm making, and as I'm deleting on the new, it gets also deleted. So in the end, my backup will only be like a copy, like an exact copy of what I kept as well. Because it becomes very difficult, especially when you start having a large body of work and doing it for a long time. I recently went through the process, because if I didn't do that for a few trips over the past sort of 4 years, but recently I moved all my files into one unified system, and I spent about 3 weeks full time just culling things, because I was like, I want to start clean. I do not want to have excess files that are not, because I became better at doing it later, but I've started my new system starts in 2009, and anything 2009 to now I have in that server. And so I didn't want from those first years, I see there was some sort of fairly large amount of things that were like not needed. So I went through that culling process like retrospectively.
Can you remember how many terabytes of stuff you had and how much you have now?
Yeah, right now, currently, I think I have 29 terabytes of current files. And I probably call the solid 5 terabytes, I would say, because the videos amount as well. It's mostly video. Like my space requirements have grown exponentially since I moved more into professional video than stills.
Sandy, do you know how much storage space you've taken up?
I have got so many portable hard drives, including a remote one that lives at my daughter's house, just in case. But I reckon I can fill up a 4 terabyte hard drive in maybe 18 months.
Yeah, I reckon that's a pretty long time myself.
You reckon? But I don't do a lot of video, given that. Yep.
I suppose I'm putting all the audio backups on as well, but I fly through. I fly through 2 terabyte drives like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
I'm now thinking about you, Nick. You said you filled up the server. Have you got a external server?
This one is this one. I have 40 terabytes on there, so I have another 11 terabytes free on that one.
Yeah, and sorry we're away from photography a little bit, but it is essential.
It's part of. I get a lot of questions during wildlife photography workshops and things. Very often the question of workflow comes up, because people are curious about how to store the photos, how to work through them. Do you keep the original here or that? There's a lot of questions about that, because there is a lot of information out there, but it's easy to get lost, because it is easy to have a lot of images, and it's a very common question that I get.
So Nico, do you use like a RAID array, or have you got something like
No, I went the cheap way.
NAS, network attached storage, or
it's network attached, but I work on it in a way where it's a lot of those things you can buy, like the casing with the different bays and things. You can select which type of RAID you want, what sort of redundancy. Go from the best one would be where you literally lose half of your data storage, but it's all backup. But because I'm
on the other half,
exactly. So, but I would feel like I'm very diligent.
Example, just so people know how we're talking about, that could be one cabinet where you would have 8 hard drives in it, but 4 of them are mirroring the other 4. So you lose. 4 fail, you've got it.
Yeah.
Now, most people would also need to have an off-site storage, so that would be something like out-of-the-box network attached storage, or something where maybe this is how you've got it with your daughter, Sandy, where over the internet it backs up to that, apart from if you've got any in the cloud, because of course you can lose stuff which someone else controls in the cloud.
Yeah. I don't use the cloud at all, because we're in Australia, the internet is slow, It's just not an option. And our files are so huge, it would take forever. So I just don't bother with the cloud. It's just not worthwhile.
Yeah, it's not practical in Australia.
No, no.
So now that I've covered that, let's go back to birds.
The odd one out.
Yeah, what I think you'd call this, there's one in every crowd, I think.
Yes. This has been extremely popular and it has actually been stolen. So I've had a few fights with legal departments around the world to get it removed. People started sharing it without my name. I don't mind people sharing my stuff, but I want to be credited for it. So I had a few battles which I won because I could prove this was my shot. But yeah, I knew when I was taking this what it would end up as, and I think it speaks to being the odd one out. This row of galahs, this was on a dirt road north of Balaclava in the mid-north of South Australia. Yeah, and yeah, I love it.
I'll leave the image up. Can we talk about that issue? And maybe, Nico, you might have some examples of this too, where people are nicking your stuff and passing it off as being theirs, or if they're a resharing website, they accumulate other people's work and then for clicks they get it out there and they profit off it that way. How did you get to prove this was yours, Sandy? Do you keep your location services on and all of that metadata attached to every shot?
It was extremely easy. I contacted legal departments of places like Reddit, and I was able to direct them to the image on Flickr. And, of course, Flickr's got all the information there. What is it, EXIF information?
EXIF data, EXIF data.
Yeah, EXIF data. And you just got to scroll down to see the serial number of the camera and the date. And, yeah, it was clearly my photo, and they didn't question it at all. They just immediately removed the photo. Well, within a week it took them to remove the photo.
Did they remove the offending person's account?
No, they didn't.
That's what they need to do to stop this happening. I mean, I'm sure I reshare stuff on Twitter inadvertently, not knowing that it is a stolen image. But I clearly want to say, if anyone ever notices that I've done that, tell me, and I'll not only delete it, I'll bloody report and block the account that I shared it from. Because
look, it's really not hard to credit the photographer. I'm in a habit of not sharing any photo unless I know who the photographer is. And of course, this is my art. I put a lot of time and effort and money into getting shots like this, and it's just all I ask is to have my name attached to it.
Have you been the victim of pirates, Nico?
Very often, yeah, very, very often. And it's always the same. They're not easy to find, those systems to request removal and things like that, but they exist on all platforms, and I've helped a lot of friends showing them where to go. On Instagram, for example, there is a very straightforward process where you click on this, you're like, yep, I want to report this is my photo, and all they ask is the link to the original or any proof that you have is the original, link to the offending image. Usually within a few days, it's deleted on the other person's account. They're pretty good with that. It's the same system on Twitter, same system on TikTok. I've done it on all platforms. YouTube pushes it even further, has a great feature where it will always have an AI bot. It finds it, and I receive emails. And several times I've had people download my wildlife videos and re-upload it as theirs, changing everything, putting their name on it. And then in that case, YouTube's out. You have two options. You can either, because YouTube recognizes it's yours, it's your content. And YouTube, you have two things. We can either send them, you tell them they have 7 days to take the content down, and then they don't get a strike against their accounts, or you can have it removed straight away and they get a strike against their accounts. And usually it's going to depend on the situation what I do. But it happens a fair bit on YouTube. Like things where people take your whole like I've had complete full videos taken and then re-uploaded on accounts. And as I said, those accounts that make money selling merchandise, make money like in various ways. It's a completely different discussion when someone approaches you the proper way and say, this is a great clip, we would like to use it for this and that. And like often the answer is no. And you were talking about all those like sharing accounts on Instagram and things. And I guess I feel like I'm a bit different than a lot of my friends, photography friends and things like that. I have a pretty much like a 99 no policy. I never tag hubs, like bird hubs, feature hubs, things like that, because basically those things do nothing for the creator, absolutely nothing. They might get you like especially in the how Instagram is built these days and how it works, it just does nothing. All it does is removing you one step further, because a lot of people will share from those hubs, and then the credit gets lost, everything gets cropped. And it might sound like, I've had a lot of discussion about it, might sound like petty or anything, but it just brings absolutely nothing, both to the bird, to the conservation, because most of these hubs never really grab your caption or do anything. They just like, look, pretty pink bird in flight, comment what you think about the color pink. And that's all to get engagement. And then like a little bit down the track, they're like, oh, look, we have some merch to sell, or we have this and that. And to me, it does nothing. So I constantly say no, to the point I've been blocked by a lot of hubs in Australia, not by being anything, just by every time they share, I was, hey, I didn't give you permission to share. Also, often it's very disrespectful. They don't even follow you. They don't follow your work. They're not invested. Just see the photo and just take it and share it. And even if it's properly credited, which is very rarely done, it's usually your credit will be buried in between 50 hashtags, so no one can ever see it. No one ever looks at this. So to me, there is no point of being featured on those hubs at all. Besides, some people enjoy seeing their work on there and getting a few extra likes and things. I wouldn't care less about being on those things. I really select carefully who I let use my photos, and it's often people that I either have a working relationship with, or I can trust how the message is put across. But yeah, hubs and shit.
That's a really fraught concept too, isn't it? About value. Who gets the value? From my standpoint, where I am trying to create value is to amplify the conservation message and the educative message. Sandy, I guess yours is probably a little bit more in the artistic and the self-help's not the right word, but the feeling good about the world around us.
Also education.
Yeah. And Nick, yours is, this is your livelihood, so you have
as well.
You have turf you need to stake out and protect as
well.
Communicate.
But it's a lot about that. What we're talking about, and same that Sandy was just saying. To me, it's about keeping the messaging, the caption original, the content. If a hub is there solely for the purpose of sharing nice image, that we still write information conservation message, something that actually like proactively can do something, that's fine. 99% of the time, that's not the case.
And people don't understand what the copyright laws are. They really do not understand it at all. And if I do complain on Twitter about what's happened, every time I'll get people saying, well, it's your own fault for not putting a watermark on. They don't understand that a watermark offers you no extra legal protection. Watermarks can be removed. I don't personally like watermarks. I think they interfere with the image. And so I end up in this debate with people about using watermarks or not. And it's victim blaming. Nobody has the right to take a photographer's photo and use it however they wish. And it's not my fault that they've taken it.
And I might point out too, I made this point in our discussion last time, Nico, but just so Sandy is aware, all the overlays here, unless they've got the black border on the side, I've had to crop in a way to fit the aspect ratio for this particular format. So some of these photos are a little bit different than the way Sandy originally cropped them.
Yep.
Now, I'm trying as much as I can not to make any artistic interpretation, but there is a compromise that is made to fit them into this aspect ratio. So I just wanted to point that out so that people might look at your one, Sandy, from your feed or in your Flickr and go, oh, they're a bit different. What have you done? Well, that's why.
Yeah.
I don't try to interfere, because then it's not my work. This says it down there. It says whose work it is. Sandy, let's do a couple of parrots before we talk about two pictures that are a bit different to your regular run-of-the-mill's the wrong term, because none of your photography is run-of-the-mill, but your regular fare. Let's talk about two parrots. Let's talk about this one.
The beautiful Regent Parrot. They're just a stunning bird. This is either a female or a young bird, I'm not sure which. But I had heard tales of a large flock of Regent Parrots up at Gluepot at a particular bird hide. The next weekend I jumped in my little car, and it's really not suitable for taking to Gluepot, but it's been there 3 or 4 times now. And I went up there and I got up at, 4 o'clock in the morning and did the long walk into this bird hide so I could be there at dawn and to wait and hope that the Regent Parrots came in. And I got some beautiful shots of lots of different birds, including, and there were about 30 Regent Parrots that came in and spent some time around this particular water point. And it was just such a beautiful morning. And I had the place to myself. I really like being on my own in the wilderness. It's special to me. And I just had the best time. These are lovely birds.
Of course, closely related to the superb parrot and the princess parrot. Marvellous looking birds. I would guess, I'm thinking that that's probably a juvenile, and maybe a juvenile female would almost be my guess. But
yes, you could be right.
you can never be too sure judging on the photographs. But if anybody's
it's a gorgeous photograph.
Thanks, Nick.
If anybody's an absolute expert on Regent Parrots, we're happy to be guided on what we should be looking at to make a really, really, really confident identification. Speaking of gorgeous parrot.
Yeah, that was from a different visit to Gluepot, I believe, if I remember correctly. That's a mulga parrot coming into land. They are the sweetest little parrots. They're much smaller than the Regent Parrot, but they have these insane electric colours. They're just remarkable. They're fairly common. You can find them fairly easily here in South Australia. But yeah, a lovely bird.
All of that genus are really nice birds, I reckon.
Yeah, beautiful.
They're nice birds to see around. Have you got any mulga parrot stories, Nico? You would have seen many in your trip.
Yes, I do. I saw some. Where was I? I can't really remember, but I have a good Gluepot story. Though.
Well, hold on to that, because there's a fair bit of stuff we're going to get into with Gluepot in a minute. I just want to talk about two images
mulgas
before we get down there. Yeah, mulgas. Maybe Sandy, can you remember what you took this with?
That would have been my new setup, my R6 with the 100 to 500 lens.
And was this a shoot 2,000 shots and pick one?
Yeah, pretty much. A really high shutter speed to try to freeze those wings. But yes, that's right.
Raptors are always popular. Tell us about the red-tailed eagle.
This guy, I think this was a young wedgie. This was up north of Olymp Dam, up near Roxby Downs, up at a really remote spot. I came across this wedge-tailed eagle and parked a long way from it and gradually walked up to it. And I kept being surprised that it wasn't moving. It just was perfectly happy for me to be there. Sometimes it would stick its leg up and have a little sleep. It was so incredibly relaxed. I was right there in front of it and it wasn't moving. And my camera was getting heavy and I was talking to it saying, "Are you going to fly anytime soon?" So I got this. I like this shot where it's looking directly at me and it's all fluffy. I call this shot Bad Hair Day. And, of course, when it did eventually fly, I got the lovely launch shot that you love to get, with the wings totally spread out. Then it just flew into another low tree not very far away. It clearly did not worry about me whatsoever. So I spent about 45 minutes with this bird. And that's one of those special moments that will stay with me, because that doesn't happen very often.
Nick, I always mention that we can anthropomorphise images and project onto it, but one of the things I like about this one is, as you mentioned, Sandy, he does look quite relaxed, he or she, and doesn't have that really threatening, ferocious stare that wedgies so often have when they know they're being studied. Do you get that feeling from this one?
Yeah, it's more like an inquisitive sort of look. And it's young, so it doesn't have that whole, like, it has a very different vibe than the adults do. That stare you're describing, it's one of the most incredible stare I think you can see, like, it's through binoculars, or because it's not silly that they stare like that when you're around, but they have this like powerful stare all the time. They are a powerful bird. They have this, again, morphizing a lot here, but you look at a wedgie and they just look like they know they own the sky. They know.
The confidence of the top predator.
It's just, yeah, and it's such a gorgeous bird. And just sheer size of them.
Yeah, it's a bit like your leopard that we talked about last time, Nick, is it? No, or the rhino. No dramas. Nothing's happening to me, fellas. Yeah,
it's fine.
Sandy, most of your pictures are what I would call very naturalistic. There's not a lot of obvious editing or effects applied or anything. But when you told me about this one coming next, you said you broke all the rules.
Yeah.
Tell us about this one.
I was at a local suburban wetland area, and it was late in the day, the sun was setting, and I was looking directly into the sun thinking, I'm just crazy. I'm not going to get any good photos here. So I sat down and felt a bit dejected, but I was watching these swans and thinking, maybe I'll try and break the rules. Had a little voice in the back of my head saying, break the rules. I deliberately overexposed everything, just ramped everything up, and I got about 3 frames like this, and it was just amazing. And I've done very little to that. That's pretty much how it came out of the camera. And I was able to blow out that background beautifully, and I've since framed that photo, and it's now in one of my bedrooms here, and I just love it. So it goes to show that you can break the rules and it can work. And I want to do more of this type of photography. I want to get more artistic with my photos. So I'll be probably trying to break the rules a bit more in future.
And Nico, I haven't seen much of your work that has gone down this kind of path. Do you mess around a bit for your own interest or enjoyment?
Oh yeah, a lot of missed slow pans or like slow shutters, trying to get something a bit different to the listeners or people like looking at the image now. Is because this sort of technique that Sandy did, like it's called high key, and then it's basically you would sort of like overexpose the surroundings, the backgrounds, and it works really well in this case as well because the bird is black, and so it really brings all the detail as well in there. It has a really good contrast. I do remember I have I did some black and white high key shots of the kookaburra in Adelaide, actually, when I used to live there, and it's I do it sometimes. I don't post a lot. I think it's probably the only black and white photo I've ever posted, maybe in a very, very long time, because a lot of my work, as I say, it's natural history, documenting. Maybe I should spend more time experimenting, like more posting some of those experiments.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? It takes a lot of time to do it, to learn the techniques, and to then find something you're happy with. So it's a big investment in time to go down another artistic route, isn't it? Now,
it is, but I think it's always nice to do something. I feel like to do something a different style. Like even if it's not necessarily, and again that's my opinion of it, but I feel like there's in any style of photography you can learn something that will be valuable to your current photography. And as we discussed in the previous podcasts, I used to photograph concerts when I really started shooting for people, so shooting concerts in venues in Paris, and I've done a lot of studio work, and I've often just for my own enjoyment, and as I was learning more and more, done a lot of things that are completely unrelated to what I do now, but I've learned a lot from this experience, and I feel like in photography and bird photography, you can learn a lot from that as well. That trying something new, testing a new different style, because it will give you a new insight on how light works, movements, like anything. There's always something. And through the concert photography, I really learned how to get the specific exposures in very difficult lighting conditions, which often I apply in the rainforest. When you have one stream of light coming through the canopy and lighting that bird, it looks exactly like when you had one strobe of light going to the face of the person singing or the musician. So there's a lot of parallels you can make through that, and I feel like it's very beneficial, even if you don't end up like sharing any of it really for your own personal growth as an artist. I think it's a good thing to do.
And you learn a lot from your mistakes too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that social media doesn't always show, is how many mistakes and how many hours and how many missed things happens for you to be able to curate that feed.
Exactly.
Now we're going to look at a few images that are quite different to your usual fare, Sandy, and then a few more birds. Then I teased everyone that we were going to do feelings. Then we get into the feelings. Just stick about. Where was this, Sandy?
That was at one of my favourite beach spots, Bald Hill Beach near Port Wakefield. That's a bar-tailed godwit, one of my favourite shorebirds. They're just amazing. They travel to Siberia from here every year to breed and come back again. And I really enjoy spending time with them. We have a few overwintering at the moment, but most of them are still in the Northern Hemisphere, but they'll be coming back about September, I should think. So I'll be back at Bald Hill Beach once they start arriving, and the other shorebirds that are migrating. But these are great. They're really hard to get close to, and this is again where my 2x extender comes in handy, although I didn't have it for this particular shot. But they're fascinating birds. If you want, look them up. If you're out there and don't know much about these birds, do a Google search on them. They are just the most fascinating birds. I've been at Bald Hill Beach when they're just about ready to depart in March, and I've watched them getting ready for their big trip. And they do like flight training up and down the beach in formation. It's just amazing to see. And I think about, there you go. And I think about their big journey ahead. And maybe some aren't going to make it. Will they come back? And it just boggles my mind what they can do.
Now, I will probably add to the web post for this episode, Sandy, some of those animated GIFs of the migration for some of the godwits. I don't know if I've got access to any for the Southern Hemisphere, but certainly the amazing distances that both the Northern Hemisphere birds and the Southern Hemisphere birds traverse. There's some great tracking motions out there, so I'll try and find some of those. And
an interesting thing about these birds is those jaunty bills of those, their curved bills, they can actually move them. I actually got a photo of them with the tip upturned, and I thought, what's going on there? And then I found out that it's something they do. They're actually flexible. They don't look like they're flexible, but they are.
And if you're interested in shorebirds and the great migratory journeys, on the pod, I've done Toby Ross, Amanda Lilliman, we've done all the curlews. So there's plenty to chase up if you're interested in migratory birds and the amazing journeys that they do. And especially the tales about how much they have to eat to be able to do the journey. And, they're just staggering.
Again, that's another tale about not disturbing the birds. When they're about ready to leave, you need to keep your distance from them because they're trying to fatten up. They're madly trying to eat, and you shouldn't really be chasing them around the beach at that point in time because they really do need to conserve their energy for their big flight.
We certainly talked about that with Amanda Lilliman, talking about the curlews at Darwin Harbour and how you needed to leave them be. Just on these shots of the godwits, Sandy, you said you didn't have your extender with you, but did you take these with the massive telephoto or with...
I actually think the one before wasn't with the extender because that's a fairly old photo, but that one I think I did have the extender on for that one. That's a fairly recent photo. That was probably from February this year.
Okay, just having a look. We've got another. Okay, I'll just mark that comment, and we'll get back. We'll come back to that, I think, when we're talking a bit more about feelings. I have some ideas about Kangaroo Island, but actually, let's just raise this one. Are we all worried about travelling again now that we've got these massive waves of COVID again happening all around the world?
Yeah, I am. I suffer from anxiety, so COVID is like the perfect storm for me. I'm 60, I'm no spring chicken anymore, and I just want everything to settle down before I consider any long trips again. I had a disastrous trip over Easter. I had to attend a funeral in Queensland and they lost my bag, and that's enough to put me off as well. So
which we've been following on. You've finally got a win.
I did get a win. I did get a win.
But let's talk about that when we get back into the feelings part.
Yeah.
But Nico, are you worried? Because I know you've got some things slated, some trips to undertake later in the year. Are you worried now that there seems to be evidence that these latest variations are evading the vaccines and causing illness in people who a few months ago we were all really confident wouldn't get seriously ill?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's on the whole like spectrum of thing, like worried like health wise. I caught COVID maybe a month and a half ago, and it was absolutely not a fun experience at all. And yeah, like just in the logistics of things, because as part of like work we do travel a fair bit, and yes, I am like to make it short. Yes, I'm worried. There's so many like different topics that it affects that we didn't think of. Like right now, that whole like luggage issue around the world, like with people like having like lost luggage locked all the time. That's why I highly recommend anyone to put trackers in their luggage. Yeah. It makes things super easy, like an air tag or a tile. It's saved a lot of my friends putting that in their Pelican case, because if the airline is, we don't know where it is, you look at your phone, you're like, I know where it is. It's in that pile. And they're like, oh yeah, there he is under that pile of luggage. It's really it's a big thing. But yeah, I am very worried, and I try a lot. When I know I have a job coming up where I have to go somewhere, I will be a hermit even more than usual for the week or the 10 days leading to that, and really keep my outings to a minimum in terms of going to like a densely populated place and things, because I don't want to catch COVID again. It really wasn't fun at all. But also, I don't want to jeopardize its work. I don't want to jeopardize, arrive on location and be like, sorry, I can't do anything, or this or that. Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, this whole time I've stopped going and seeing people. I go to the supermarket as soon as it opens, so that there's the absolute bare minimum of people there. So that reduces your chances. But I think we've all got to start modifying our behaviours again, or else we're all going to be really stuck in this loop that just keeps going and going. All right. On the luggage, have you seen the pictures that were circulating yesterday of that amazing pile of baggage that's still stuck at Heathrow? Like it doesn't seem to have reduced at all in 2 weeks.
It's insane. It's a small thing. If you have to travel and have things in check-in, put a tracker into it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's worth the price of admission just for that tip, especially your gear that is your professional livelihood relies on it. So, yeah, certainly.
Absolutely. And I've always said it as well in the previous one. Yeah, I always travel with enough in my carry-on to be able to do the work, to be able to because it's most of the time, it's more like the expedition documentary type stuff. So I don't need to have the long lens with me. But I need everything. I need the main body, a lens, an audio, just everything that I could, and at a minimum, do the job without any of my luggage arriving, sort of stuff. It's a good advice. Even if you're going on a holiday somewhere, having for a birding trip or photo birding trip or anything, have a setup where you can have everything you need that is necessary in there. And I've also had a lot of most of my gear was stolen out of check-in luggage, so I'm avoiding that as much as possible.
Yeah, when I had my bag lost, a lot of people said, well, why didn't you just take carry-on? Well, they don't understand when you've got gear to take. My backpack is full of my laptop, my long lens, my camera, what I need to just get by. I'm not checking that. So
Never.
I just have,
Never.
yeah.
I saw something yesterday where somebody was talking about the compromises you have to make. And then I thought about the way that I travel, and I always thought that I was a freak, that when I go somewhere, this is generally if I'm going into Southeast Asia, as anyone who knows me well knows, I love going to the Philippines and I've got piles of friends over there. And because I'm generally going to be staying with people, with, families or something, is generally how I travel. I take the important things, like you just mentioned, Sandy, laptop. Sometimes, last time I went, I took a mixing desk and a whole lot of other audio kind of gear. And I take the shoes that I want because they're hard to replace over there. And then I take what I'm wearing. And then when I get there, I go and I buy some secondhand clothes. And so I don't have to worry about stuff getting lost. And I always thought, I must be I never saw any, only business people doing the commutey kind of flight who would just walk off with what they've got, a backpack and that's it. I hate carousels. I never trusted it to start with. And now I think maybe I'm doing it the right way, because I would do it differently if I was going on a round the world trip or something and was going to go to hot place, cold place, do meetings and all that. That's different. But that's not how I ever travel. I can get away with 2 pairs of shorts, some T-shirts, a hat and boots, sand shoes and some flip-flops, So apart from toiletries, personal gear and then the audio and photography kind of gear and the computer and some way to make sure you can access the internet, they're the things that you need. I don't again, my framing's different too in everything. I don't care.
I have a son who lives in Seattle in America, and I'm keen to go and visit him. But I think it'll be probably this time next year at least before I get over there. Yeah,
I was hoping to do a trip in October, November, but I've completely put this year out of the frame.
Yeah.
I'll do something locally instead.
And there was a question from Stan earlier about Kangaroo Island, and I was supposed to go to Kangaroo Island to celebrate my 60th birthday last year, but of course COVID was raging, things were really uncertain, so that didn't happen. And then it was supposed to happen this year, and again we're just not sure. So maybe it'll be next year, but I do plan to get to Kangaroo Island sometime soon and do some birding over there.
Me too. Now I'm going to bring up 2 birds that I particularly love.
Oh, yeah. My spotted pardalotes. This was it was the time when I met those lovely people with the peregrine falcons at Spring Gully Conservation Park. I was sitting, I'd hiked through to this particular point to position myself at a dead tree where I knew the peregrine falcons liked to roost sometime. So I sat there for a long time, maybe an hour, had my settings all ready for the peregrines, and I heard a bit of activity over to my left, and I quickly swung around, and there were these 2 little spotted pardalotes collecting nesting material. So I didn't get my peregrines, but I got these, and they're just such beautiful little birds. And I like that they're actually doing something. It's actually interesting.
Yeah, that's what I like. And I can't think of many photos of pardalotes that aren't at the burrow entrance or the hollow entrance where I've seen more than one bird in a good shot. Can you think of many, Nick?
Not with both, no. Not usually. It's usually like a soul bird. They're such gorgeous little things as well. They're so loud and so small. It's incredible that something so small has such a loud little call.
Can you remember what you took the shot with, Sandy?
That was my new. Actually, I've got to think back now. That was about this time last year, in fact. So it would have been my 7D Mark II with my new 100 to 500 lens on board, I think.
Cool. Now, another one of my favourite birds, which I have only very rarely seen out in the wild. They're not common on this side of the divide. Diamond firetail, Sandy.
Yeah. This was at the beach. This was one of those days, you know how you get a little checklist when you're going somewhere and you think, oh, I want to get this bird and I want to get this bird. Well, I had about 4 birds that I hoped to see when I was over near Port Lincoln. So I got a few tips about where these birds hung out. And it was one of those really weird days where you just go tick, 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 and your list gets checked off all within the space of a couple of hours. So I went to Louth Bay and I got some osprey shots. And then I headed to Poonindi and got some Cape Barren geese shots. And then I headed to Point Boston. People had told me that these birds were there. And, yep, there they were. And you've got the lovely ocean in the background. So that was really nice. They look like they're dressed up to go to a formal dinner or something, don't they? All in their fancy formal gear.
The background colours here really complement with the bird. It's really, really nicely balanced. It's gorgeous, and it's a gorgeous bird. I've only ever seen it once,
Okay. Yeah, they're lovely. Love those.
Mm.
Sandy, you just said that you sometimes go out with a list of what you want to secure, the shots you want to get, the species you want to get on the day. Now, is that your normal modus operandi?
No, it's just a little mental wish list, and it rarely plays out like that where I'm successful. If I'm going to a spot like that, like Port Lincoln, it's a really long drive. I do a bit of research to find out what I'm likely to see over there. So, yeah, I just had it in my mind about the birds I might see, and you know that you're lucky even to get one on your list. But the fact that I ticked 4 off on the one day was exceptional. I don't often go out looking for specific birds because you're often disappointed when you do that. I mean, I did go to Glupot to look for the Regent Parrots because I knew they were there, and that paid off. But really, most of the time, I'm out there and just whatever the universe gives me, I'll take photos of.
How about you, Nick? When you're not working on a project, but when you're out on your home patch and you've got your camera and you're going to take some photos for pleasure, have you got targets in mind? Have you got a list, whether it's mental or?
Sometimes it's a bit of both. Sometimes I'll be like, I know there is this in this area, I'll go and have a look and spend time on that. Or sometimes it's literally whatever will come my way. I don't even go with any expectations of like mammals. That's especially true for my local urban park, which I spend a lot of time at, especially in the past sort of 6 months. It's quite a large park, has different habitats in it, and I absolutely love working through it. And some days it's literally just this. We're talking about like therapy before. It's this thing where it just changes everything. No matter how crap my day was, or if I just spend the whole day at the computer or something, I just grab the camera and walk around and see what I can find. And sometimes I'm come home with 0 photo, nothing, that I might have like 5 or 6 images, but just don't keep anything. And sometimes I come home with great images because of what I encountered. So I think there's a lot of benefits as well to just being happy to be surprised about what's out there. So I would say 50-50. Sometimes I know what I want and I will go to a specific area for it, but I really enjoy just the walking around and see what's about.
Now, we hadn't planned this, but you mentioned therapy. I promised that we were going to get to the feelings bit. It's really it's really for you to free rein now, because I want you to talk about what photography means to you. This image is really poignant. It's at Glupot.
Yes.
So tell us about this.
This was the time where I got the Regent Parrots, but half of the reason I was there was because I just split from my 7-year relationship, and I was quite depressed and upset. And I know that getting out birding makes me feel better. So I heard about the Regent Parrots, jumped in my car and drove to Glupot. And I slept in my little car, very basic, very uncomfortable. This shot was not set up in any way. I actually had a call of nature and went off, and I looked back and thought, oh, that might make a good shot. So I went back and got the camera and just took a few shots of that. And I really like it because there I am, I had the place to myself. There was nobody within miles of me. And it was really nice. So I settled down in that car and had a very uncomfortable night's sleep before getting up at 4 o'clock and setting off for the long walk to the bird hide to see the Regent Parrots. But that's what I do. People ask me sometimes, aren't you scared being on your own? And I said, no, I love it, because the bush there actually talks to you. When you're on your own and you listen carefully, you hear the wind through the she oaks and it makes this beautiful noise. It almost sounds like a person talking. And I really like that, being on my own. And you have the beautiful sky as well. The night sky is just amazing. This is what I do to make myself feel better. My psychologist said that I'm really lucky that I know what helps, because she counsels many people who never have that. They don't have anything that makes them feel good. She said, all you need to do is grab your camera and jump in your car and go out bush, and you know that makes you feel better. And she's right. I do have that strategy. So now I'm just waiting for a 4-wheel drive to be delivered, which I've had on order since March, so I can get back to the remote places that really make me happy.
Sandy, the breakup of a significant relationship that's been so long, and a part of it, from what I can gather from following you on social media, that was really important, apart from the personal relationship, was that you had access to that 4-wheel drive.
Yes.
And it was that vehicle was like a big part of your weekend identity, I guess, for getting out and going places.
Exactly. The places I go, quite difficult to get to quite often. And my partner had a Triton that I used to drive quite a bit to get to these places. We also had a little tiny caravan that I loved. Well, that's all gone now. I don't have access to that. So one of the first things I did was order myself a 4-wheel drive, even though it's taking all of my savings. So there's no safety net anymore. I knew it was absolutely critical for me to have that. And, yeah, I've bitten the bullet. I'm getting a 4-wheel drive. When it gets here, I'm going to take some courses. I'm going to learn how to use it, drive it, get myself out of trouble, lower the tyre pressures, change a tyre, do all of that, because, I have to be independent. I don't want to have to rely on a guy anymore to do that for me. So, yeah, there you have it. I'm an independent woman.
Nico, do you ever find the birding and the photographer, and let's extend it for your stuff, because it's wildlife in general and the landscapes, is a large part of why you are passionate about photography, rooted in a sense of well-being by being out in the elements?
I would say so. There's multiple studies that show the health benefits of being in nature, lowering blood pressure and just making it just does wonders to that. And yeah, I would say it's a huge part of why I enjoy it so much, because I don't think I've ever been more relaxed and happy and at peace, if you want, than when I'm in a remote place with just nature sounds and out in sort of I would say the middle of nowhere. It doesn't even have to be the middle of nowhere. Like I said, my urban park, walking through the Melaleuca swamps, like bird calls, sound, nature sounds around. It's just that there is this calming effect that is really hard to explain why, but it just happens. And I'm lucky that it's mixed with, for me, nature also equates to nature photography, and it's this outlet where I go out and you become more curious about your surroundings. You become more observant. You discover a lot of things, and through all of that, it's a part of it that I absolutely enjoy, and I know for a fact it does absolute wonders to how I feel on a day-to-day basis, and having access and doing that. And like I said, it can be very remote places. It can just be the local park, because we're very lucky in Australia that we have so much wildlife. Even in urban settings, we have an incredible bird life. And so to answer your question, yes, absolutely, it's a big part of why I enjoy it so much. It's how it makes me feel, and then which is very, very good.
I agree with everything you've just said there, Nico. I find that when you're out, you're using all of your senses. You're listening and you're looking and you're really in tune with nature. I can't understand these people who go to these parks and they've got earphones listening to music. I think they're missing the point, because there's so much to listen to. And
absolutely, and that's what I always say. If you like nature and birds and things, you will never get bored. Like sometimes it might just be you have a layover somewhere for a few hours, you can go to a park and discover something like completely new. It really brings out there's new things. You start noticing new animals, new just little changes. It's great.
And when you're out there trying to get the shot, you're not thinking about what bills need paying or work or anything else. And you've got hyper-focused.
Yeah, and I often get, because you just mentioned getting the shots. I often have people that tell me, like you're behind the camera, like you're not enjoying the moment or anything. And I always highly disagree with that, because there's a few things that's coming into play. So as you said, part of the being in nature and feeling that nature therapy is great. And then I add that photo element. But the fact is that that's why I always tell people that say that it comes down to knowing the equipment as well a lot, so that I don't fight it, because I've been doing it for so long. Everything is second nature to me. I'm not here looking at an animal and fumbling around trying to like do something, looking at the screen, buttons, this and that. I have it in the viewfinder and I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't need to put the camera away. I know where everything is in my hand. So that specific fact makes it that I very rarely feel that missing the moments, because I am able to capture it while enjoying it. And I think that's something that you get to when you reach a certain like technical level, because then you have the creativity on top of that. That is like that has no sort of limit how far you can learn and do. But the technical thing, once you master that specific gear, it's not in your way anymore. It's if you take photos, you're like, oh, why is it blurry, or what is that? What's ISO again? If you get to that point, because if you like it so much, you get to that point where it's second nature. All those things that you don't even have to like think twice about them; they just come naturally to you. Then you enjoy what's going on, and you don't really feel like you would be missing what's going on. But sometimes as well, when it's something that I've put down the camera and I'll get the photo I want and then just put it down and watch. Or sometimes I just take my binoculars as well, no camera, and I just go around. But that's usually when I see really, really, really cool stuff. But that's another story.
Yeah, when you see really, really good stuff, your heart rate goes a million miles an hour, and you tend to shake. So part of that is trying to control your heart rate, your breathing, and your shaking, so you get the shot, because you're going to mess up the shot if you shake too much. I think there's a lot to what you're saying about controlling your senses to get that shot.
Yes, and it's as you said, like your heart starts racing, and so it doesn't matter. I keep on banging about like urban parks, because I do spend a lot of time in that park lately. But it's like my heart races, even if you see like a common species do something that you've never seen before, or something exciting. Very recently, I filmed a koala jump from one branch to another, and I've never seen a koala leap that far in my life, and I was ecstatic just watching that koala do that. Or a few days ago, I caught up with a young photographer that I've met a few weeks ago in the park here, and he does photography as well. And we saw each other, and then I stopped to photograph a swamp wallaby. He continued with his dad, and then he called me saying, "Oh, we just came across an echidna. It's in the open. You should come in and photograph it." And it's something that's really, really uncommon in that urban park, an echidna walking around on the Gold Coast. And so I was so excited. It was a little way to go, but it's also a park that a lot of people use to jog or ride their bike. But must have been quite a funny sight, because my heart was racing, and here I am running with my big tripod, the big lens, the camera, the bag, and I overtook someone who was jogging, and I was just literally passing, because I'm like, I heard there's an echidna, I'm on it, and I just like running up. So it was just this funny moment of excitement. And again, and one of the things you get, I feel like you get the therapy through the calmness and all those sounds, but I think you also get this excitement, but I would say healthy excitement, instead of having this sort of like short burst of dopamine brought to you by like social media and your little screen. You get those actually like really organic, exciting moment where you're like your brain is happy and for a completely different like reason. And I feel like it's like the natural like way of getting excited. And yeah, it's just works so wonderfully. And I can really relate to what you're saying as well, the being out there. And I'm really excited for you to get back on the road with your 4-wheel drive and see where you take that.
You have done another perfect segue lead in for my next question, Nick.
You're welcome.
About social media and the endorphins and the rush and the positive affirmation that you can get. Often in discussions nowadays, that's talked about in a negative way. But Sandy, I'm getting the impression from watching maybe your last year on Twitter that Twitter has been a bit of a safe space and a positive environment for you, and building community and getting support basically through sharing your photography. So we've only got a few minutes left, and so if anyone in the audience wants to make a comment or ask something, now is the time to do it. But Sandy, do you want to talk about your relationship with social media?
Yeah, Twitter's a strange beast because there's a lot of really terrible people there who seem to be there only to cause trouble. But, there's some really good people there, and I've made some really true, real friendships through Twitter. And, people seem to look for my photos as something positive on Twitter, and they seem to appreciate that. So I'm happy to add some balance because Twitter is full of politics and news and bad news, and there's so much bad stuff in the world right now. And, I get dragged into that too. I get dragged into politics and that sometimes too. But I try to pull myself back and say, no, let's get back to my core mission, which is to share the photos. And, I've got people who I've met in real life who've become really good friends through Twitter. Yeah, but it's a strange beast. You really have to spend a lot of time understanding how Twitter works. And you have to use the mute button and the block button and realise that some of the comments are coming from robots. They're not actually real people.
Sure. And you have to not give a shit a lot of times.
Yeah, that's right.
Like when people have a crack at you or something, it's good. I go and have a look and they got 21 followers,
Yes.
And they've got a cartoon character as and I just picture them sitting in their underpants in grandma's basement,
Yeah.
Going, I'm really upset. That's it's always.
Well, look, I like to think of myself as helping in this time of terrible anxiety, and particularly during the time when people were in lockdown. Here in South Australia, we didn't have a lot of lockdown issues. So I was still able to get out and do my birding locally. And I think, all those people stuck in their homes and their apartments really liked that I could share my experiences. Yeah.
How do you find social media, Nico? Like you're not a heavy user of it, but certainly not a heavy poster. But are you a big consumer of any of the social media platforms?
Probably more than I should. That's what I'm saying. There's a difference between when I was mentioning about the like how I mentioned social media before, and then what we talk about how Sandy uses it. But I was more thinking of like your classic scrolling for the sake of like scrolling through, which I do sometimes. I have a few apps on my phone that try to reduce the amount of like time I spent on platforms, because it's this addictive thing where and then and social media can bring the good and can bring the bad. Like Sandy said, I've made incredible connections that would have never happened beforehand through social media. Like people that are now some of like my best friends, or that I've been on trip with, or just someone that we've had this connection for something, and just through social media. So it's been great, but it's also, there is a very like sort of dark, there are several dark aspects to these. And that's why I don't post a huge amount, but I do spend a fair bit of time on them for work as well. Like it's part of some of the projects I do. So I have to be on, and I try and actively be aware of my mental health and take breaks when needed. But it can be great and it can be terrible. That's how I would define it.
Yeah, thick skin, don't give a shit. That's the way I go with it. Well, we've got to the end Just before I wrap up, Sandy, those people in the park with their headphones on, they're listening to the back catalogue of the Bird Emergency.
Well, that's okay. That's okay then.
Which, of course, you can find. We're so close to 100 bloody episodes up and out there. If you're into birds, go back, listen. If you're into photography, go back and look at the previous Photography Fridays. Nick was the last one. I don't know who's next, but I'll promote that on Twitter. That's where I do most of the promoting. Nicolas Rakotopare. What's the best social for you, Nick?
At Laraco, basically on Instagram. That's where, like, when I do share there. I do share as well on Twitter at _Raco. Laraco was taken, but those two, or my website laraco.net. That's where all most of the things are. You mentioned Amanda Lilleman before and the Far Eastern Curlews, and it's a great podcast by Grant. I would recommend. And if you look her up as well, and you click on the video, there is a good video showcasing her work on Far Eastern Curlew and her partnership with the Larrakia Indigenous Rangers around Darwin, which I've made. So a little plug here. But it was great working with Amanda, learning about the Far Eastern Curlew and seeing how the Larrakia Rangers are working and documenting and following up what's happening with the birds.
And how's that after all that time when I spoke to Amanda, and that's quite a few years ago now, I had no idea you were involved in that project.
It's a small word, like when you look at conservation and like media around conservation in Australia. But yeah, I spent a few days in Darwin interviewing Amanda, and we went out with the rangers one time. Yeah, just making the usual short videos I used to make for the Threatened Species Recovery Hub. And there is one on the website, on the YouTube. And it was fascinating. That's what I love about that work, is I get to learn and be creative at the same time.
From memory, you have to go all the way back to episode number 2. It's either 2 or 3 of the Bird Emergency to get Amanda's episode. Sandy, you've got a 61 on your Twitter handle, so I'm just going to put that in the link. Are you doing Instagram and Facebook as well?
Yeah, I do both. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put both the links in there. Nick's is easy because it's on the screen. Anyone can see how to spell it. Sandy, thanks so much for taking the time. It's been a long time in development to get Sandy on the screen and having a chat. I'm really looking forward to what you do next now that you'll have the new vehicle and where you'll be going out. And hopefully one day we'll all get in the same location and I can put some of my crappy bird pics up against your excellent. And
I actually have met Nico before on a shorebird workshop, and the funny story about that is an osprey flew over, and I was the only one at that shorebird workshop that got the photos of the osprey, because everyone else was down on their bellies looking at the shorebirds, and I just happened to look up and see the osprey fly over, and I got the shots.
That was in 2018, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Early 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, well, Sandy, you've been taking these bird shots for 8-odd years now. Now, do you want me to share your Flickr album on the webpage, or?
I don't mind. You can if you want, yeah.
Yeah, I will do that, because there are so many. I mean, there's over 300 just in your parrots folder. Yeah. Do take that opportunity up and go through, and you will, as I did, I'm sure you will find a lot of the joy that Sandy gets from photography just bursting out. Landscapes and street stuff and a whole lot of stuff as well. So that's great. Thanks again, Nico. I don't know when we're going to do it again, but we are going to do it again.
We are, absolutely. Anytime we can.
Sandy, maybe you'll want to join us again when we maybe put someone else under the microscope. That's the format. I'm the rank outsider. I like to get some experienced people in and then get a newcomer in, and we'll go through, in depth there.
Yeah, look, I find this quite terrifying. I'm much more comfortable on the other side of the camera.
I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah, it's not my favourite thing to do, but yeah, I'll help out if you need me.
Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks for being involved on the other side of the screen, the watchers and listeners on all the formats today. Thanks for being involved. Thanks for commenting. I'm Grant Williams. I'm a bird nerd. That's Sandy Horne. She's an excellent amateur photographer, and he's Nicolas Rakotopare. and he is a professional photographer and a scientist. There we go. I got that in for you, Nick. Thanks,
you.
everyone. See ya.
Bye.